On Father's Day, I received a message from my daughter-in-law. Trip canceled. We have more important things to do than take care of a poor old man. That same night, she posted photos traveling without me. The surprise came when she returned from the trip and found an envelope on the table. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. I was sitting in my kitchen staring at the Father's Day card I'd bought for myself out of habit when my phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. The sender was Lisa, my daughter-in-law of 8 years, the woman my son Michael married against my quiet reservations. Trip canceled. We have more important things to do than take care of a poor old man. I read it 3 times before the words actually sank in. My hands started shaking, not from age, but from something deeper, something that felt like my chest was caving in. For months, I'd been looking forward to this weekend trip. Michael had suggested it himself back in April. "Dad, let's do something special for Father's Day this year. Maybe that cabin by the lake you always talked about." I'd been so excited I could barely sleep some nights, planning what we'd do, imagining conversations with my son without Lisa's constant interruptions and eye rolls. I'd even bought new fishing gear, something I hadn't done in years. The salesman at the sporting goods store had been so kind, helping me pick out the right lures, talking about how lucky my son was to have a father who still wanted to spend time with him. I'd felt proud walking out of that store, carrying bags full of hope. Now I sat there, holding my phone, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. The worst part wasn't even the cancellation. It was that word, poor. Like I was some charity case they'd been reluctantly dragging along. Like every dinner I'd paid for, every birthday gift, every time I'd helped them, financially meant nothing. Like I was just a burden they tolerated. I set the phone down and walked to my living room window. The afternoon sun was streaming through the curtains, the same curtains my wife Sarah had picked out 15 years ago, before the cancer took her. She would have known what to say to Lisa. Sarah had a way with difficult people, a patience I never mastered. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from Facebook. Lisa had posted something. Against my better judgment, I opened the app. There she was, grinning in what looked like an expensive restaurant, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to treat yourself. Life's too short not to enjoy the finer things." I scrolled through the photos. Designer handbags, expensive wine, what looked like a first-class airplane seat. My throat felt tight. They weren't just skipping our trip. They were taking their own trip, an expensive one. I sat back down at my kitchen table, still holding the phone, looking at image after image of my son and daughter-in-law living it up somewhere I couldn't even identify. Some tropical location with crystal clear water and palm trees. The kind of place I'd dreamed of taking Sarah before she got sick. Michael looked happy in the photos, relaxed in a way I rarely saw when he visited me. His arm was around Lisa as she posed with a cocktail that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Neither of them looked like they were thinking about their poor old man back home. I started remembering things I'd tried to forget, like last Christmas when Lisa had unwrapped the cashmere scarf I'd saved up to buy her, looked at it for exactly 2 seconds and said, "Oh, how practical." Then she'd rewrapped it and I never saw her wear it once. Or Michael's last birthday, when I'd given him the watch that had belonged to his grandfather. My father's watch, the one he'd worn every day for 40 years. Michael had thanked me, but Lisa had whispered something in his ear that made him frown. The next time I visited, the watch wasn't on his wrist. When I asked about it, he said it was too formal for everyday wear. I thought about the time Lisa had suggested I might be more comfortable staying home instead of joining them for their anniversary dinner. "It's just that the restaurant has such a romantic atmosphere," she'd said with that fake smile of hers. "You understand." Michael had nodded along, avoiding my eyes. Or the way she always managed to seat herself between Michael and me at every family gathering, steering conversations away from anything I tried to contribute. The way she'd check her phone whenever I spoke, making it clear that nothing I said was worth her attention. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this message wasn't a surprise. It was just the first time she'd been honest about how she really saw me. My phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. For a moment I considered not answering. Part of me wanted to see if he'd keep calling, if he'd worry about me. But I picked up after the fourth ring. "Dad?" His voice sounded strained. "Listen, about the trip, your wife already explained," I said quietly. "She didn't mean it the way it sounded. She's just stressed about work and—" "Michael," I interrupted him, something I rarely did. "Where are you right now?" Silence. "Dad, we can explain. Where are you?" We decided to take a quick weekend getaway. Lisa needed to decompress, and I hung up. I couldn't listen to more lies, more excuses. My son, the boy I'd raised alone after his mother died, the one I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college, was calling me from some tropical paradise to explain why I wasn't worth their time. I sat in my kitchen as the sun set, surrounded by the silence of my empty house. The Father's Day card was still on the table, mocking me with its cheerful message about being the world's greatest dad. I thought about Sarah, about how she used to say that family was everything, how she'd made me promise to always be there for Michael, no matter what. I'd kept that promise, even when it hurt. But sitting there in the growing darkness, I wondered if she'd understand the choice I was about to make. Because something had shifted inside me when I read that message. Something I couldn't put back the way it was. For the first time in my 57 years, I was done being the family's afterthought. The next morning, Father's Day itself, I woke up in my recliner. I'd fallen asleep there sometime after midnight, still holding my phone, still wearing yesterday's clothes. My neck ached and my mouth tasted like disappointment. I made coffee with shaking hands, the same routine I'd followed for 20 years since Sarah died. But everything felt different. The kitchen seemed smaller, shabbier. The refrigerator hummed louder than usual, filled with leftovers I'd probably end up throwing away because I never seemed to finish anything anymore. I checked my phone. No messages from Michael. No missed calls. Nothing. Lisa had posted 3 more photos overnight. Room service breakfast on what looked like a hotel balcony overlooking the ocean. Her feet in expensive-looking sandals propped up on a lounge chair. A sunset shot with the caption, "Paradise Found." I started doing math in my head. The hotel room alone had to cost at least $300 a night. The flights, the meals, the clothes she was wearing, we were talking thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, she'd called me a poor old man, like I was asking them for handouts. That's when the memories really started flooding back, not just the recent slights, but years of them. The pattern I'd been too blind or too hopeful to see. Like when I'd sold my house, the 4-bedroom colonial where I'd raised Michael, where Sarah and I had planted the oak tree that now shaded the entire front yard to help them buy their dream home. They'd needed help with the down payment, Michael had explained, just until he got his promotion. "It's too big for you anyway, Dad," Lisa had said when I'd hesitated, "and the maintenance costs must be killing you." Acho. She'd made it sound like she was doing me a favor, convincing me to downsize to this little ranch house on the other side of town. I'd given them $40,000, my entire profit from the house sale. I'd told myself it was an investment in their future, in Michael's happiness. They'd promised to pay me back within 2 years. That was 6 years ago. I'd never seen a penny of it. Then there was Lisa's graduate school. She'd decided she wanted an MBA, something about expanding her career opportunities. The tuition was steep, she'd explained, and student loans were so expensive with interest. "Dad, you've always said education is the best investment," Michael had said over dinner at their house, the house I'd helped them buy. "And Lisa's so smart. This degree will really open doors for her." So I'd cashed out part of my retirement account, $25,000. The penalty fees alone had made my accountant wince, but I'd told myself it was for family. Lisa had hugged me that night, called me the most generous father-in-law in the world. She'd gotten her MBA 3 years ago. She'd also gotten a new job that paid well enough for designer handbags and spontaneous tropical vacations. But somehow, she'd never mentioned paying me back. And I'd been too proud, too afraid of seeming petty, to bring it up. I walked through my small house, really looking at it for the first time in years. The carpet was worn thin in the high traffic areas. The paint on the kitchen walls was starting to peel. The ceiling in the bathroom had a water stain from a leak I'd never gotten properly fixed because I'd been saving money. I'd been living like a poor man because I'd made myself one. Not because I had to, but because I'd given everything to people who saw generosity as weakness, sacrifice as stupidity. I found myself in my bedroom closet, pulling out the box I kept on the top shelf. Sarah's jewelry box, the one I'd been meaning to give to Michael for his future daughter someday. Inside, underneath Sarah's pearl necklace and her wedding ring, was the letter. The letter from the attorney's office that had arrived 8 months ago. The one I'd read once and then hidden away because it felt too complicated, too overwhelming to deal with. I'd forgotten about my Uncle Harold until the lawyer contacted me. My father's older brother, the one who'd moved to Montana in the 1970s and rarely kept in touch. He'd never married, never had children, and when he died at 91, he'd left everything to his only living relative, me. The letter had outlined the basics: a ranch property, some investments, mineral rights on land that had oil deposits. The lawyer had thrown around numbers that seemed impossible. He'd asked me to call him to discuss the details to begin the process of claiming the inheritance. I'd put the letter away and told myself I'd deal with it later. I'd been overwhelmed by the idea of handling legal paperwork, of making decisions about property I'd never seen. And honestly, part of me hadn't believed it was real. Good things like that didn't happen to people like me. But sitting there on Father's Day morning, holding the letter in my hands, I started to understand something. I wasn't poor because I didn't have money. I was poor because I'd trained everyone in my life to treat me like I was worthless. I'd let Lisa's comments about my old clothes convince me that I didn't deserve nice things. I'd let Michael's embarrassment about my small house make me ashamed of my choices. I'd been so eager to prove I wasn't a burden that I'd made myself invisible. The irony was crushing. While Lisa was posting about how life's too short not to enjoy the finer things, I'd been denying myself the finer things so I could afford to give them to her. While she was calling me a poor old man, I was potentially sitting on an inheritance worth more than they'd ever imagined. I found the business card the lawyer had left with his letter. Marcus Webb, estate attorney. His office was in the city, about an hour's drive from my house. I called the number before I could lose my nerve. Webb Law Offices, how can I help you? This is Robert Chen. I received a letter about my Uncle Harold's estate. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to call, but Mr. Chen, I'm so glad to hear from you. Let me transfer you to Mr. Webb right away. Within minutes, I was talking to Marcus Webb himself. His voice was warm, professional, patient, as he explained what I'd inherited. The numbers he mentioned made my head spin. The ranch was worth close to $2 million. The mineral rights were generating steady income. The investment portfolio Harold had built over decades was worth another $1.5 million. Mr. Chen, are you still there? I realized I'd been silent for a long time. Yes, I'm just trying to process this. I understand. It's a lot to take in. The good news is that most of the assets are already generating income. Your uncle was very shrewd with his investments. Would you like to schedule a time to come in and review everything in detail? I made an appointment for the following Tuesday. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the business card. My phone buzzed. Another Facebook notification. Lisa had posted a selfie with a caption about making memories with the love of my life. She was wearing what looked like a new bikini, holding another expensive cocktail, beaming at the camera while Michael smiled beside her. I studied my son's face in the photo. He looked happy, but there was something around his eyes that reminded me of how he used to look as a teenager when he'd done something he knew was wrong. Guilty, but hoping no one would notice. I closed the app and put my phone in a drawer. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Not happiness exactly, but something close to it, a sense of possibility. I wasn't going to tell them about the inheritance, not yet. Maybe not ever, but I was going to stop living like the poor old man they'd convinced me I was. Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I drove into the city. I'd barely slept the night before, my mind spinning with questions about Uncle Harold's inheritance and what it might mean for my life. The Lushers' office was in one of those gleaming downtown towers that made me feel underdressed in my department store slacks and decade-old button-down shirt. Marcus Webb turned out to be younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His office was lined with law books and family photos, and he offered me coffee before we sat down at his conference table. "Mr. Chen, I have to tell you, your uncle was quite a character," he said, opening a thick file. "In the 30 years I represented him, he never once mentioned having family. When he finally told me about you 6 months before he passed, I was shocked. I shifted uncomfortably in my chair. We weren't close. I barely remember him from when I was a child. He remembered you, though. He told me you were the only one in the family who'd ever written to him. Said you sent him a Christmas card every year for decades, even when he never wrote back. That surprised me. I had sent those cards, mostly because Sarah had insisted it was the right thing to do. We send cards to everyone, she'd always said. You never know who needs to feel remembered. I'd continued the tradition even after she died, though I'd never gotten a single response from Uncle Harold. Marcus spread several documents across the table. Harold left very specific instructions. He wanted everything to go to you, but he also wanted you to understand what you were inheriting. He spent the last year of his life putting together this portfolio for you. The first document was a detailed breakdown of the ranch property. 300 acres in Montana with a main house, 2 guest cabins, and a barn. The photos showed a sprawling log home with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking mountain views that took my breath away. It looked like something from a magazine. The ranch generates income through cattle leasing, Marcus explained. Harold had agreements with local ranchers that bring in about $60,000 a year in passive income. The property itself is worth approximately $2.1 million in today's market. I stared at the numbers, trying to make them feel real. Then there are the mineral rights. He pulled out another document. Harold's land sits on a small but productive oil field. The royalties have been generating between $40,000 and $50,000 annually for the past 15 years. The geological survey suggests that could continue for at least another decade. My hands were actually trembling as I turned the pages. I'd spent the last 6 years pinching pennies, denying myself even small luxuries, while I'd been the heir to more wealth than I'd ever imagined possible. Finally, there's the investment portfolio. Marcus handed me a statement from a major brokerage firm. Harold was surprisingly sophisticated with his investments. Conservative, but smart. The portfolio is currently valued at just over $1.6 million, and it's been generating steady dividends. I set the papers down carefully, afraid I might damage something that represented more money than I'd made in my entire working life. "Mr. Chen, are you all right?" I realized I'd been quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry, this is just overwhelming. I've been living paycheck to paycheck for years. I never imagined." Marcus nodded, understanding. "Harold anticipated you might feel that way. He left you a letter." He handed me an envelope with my name written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, dated just 3 months before Harold's death. "Robert," it began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably wondering why a crazy old hermit left you a fortune. The truth is, those Christmas cards meant more to me than you'll ever know. After your father and I had our falling out in 1978, you were the only connection I had left to family. Every December, seeing your name on that card reminded me that I wasn't completely alone in the world. I watched you from a distance over the years. I know that sounds strange, but in a small town like yours, word gets around. I heard about Sarah's passing, about how you raised your son alone, about the sacrifices you made. I also heard about how that boy of yours takes you for granted, how his wife treats you like a burden. I'm leaving you this money because you're the only decent person left in our family. But more than that, I'm leaving it to you because I hope it will give you the courage to stop letting people walk all over you. Money isn't just about security, Robert. It's about choices. It's about dignity. It's about having the power to decide how you want to be treated. Don't waste this gift being modest or guilty. You earned it by being a good man for 70 years. Now use it to live like one." I had to stop reading. The letter blurred as tears filled my eyes. This uncle I barely remembered had been watching over me, understanding my struggles in ways that my own son never had. Marcus quietly handed me a tissue. "Take your time." When I composed myself, I finished the letter. "P.S. Don't tell anyone about this inheritance until you're ready. Trust me on this one. People show their true colors when money is involved. Give yourself time to decide who deserves to know the real you." I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. Uncle Harold had been right about people showing their true colors. Lisa's message on Father's Day had shown me hers. "What do I need to do?" I asked Marcus. For the next 2 hours, we went through paperwork. Bank accounts were transferred to my name. Investment portfolios were moved to a local branch where I could manage them more easily. The ranch would continue operating under the existing lease agreements until I decided what to do with it. By the time I left Marcus's office, I had a new debit card in my wallet linked to an account with more money than I'd ever imagined having. I also had a safety deposit box key for some additional assets Harold had left behind, including his father's gold watch collection and some family heirlooms. I drove home in a daze, Uncle Harold's letter on the passenger seat beside me. At a red light, I pulled out my phone and looked at Lisa's latest social media post. She was at the hotel spa now, getting a massage, captioning the photo with "Self-Care Sunday because I deserve it." The anger that had been simmering since Father's Day suddenly crystallized into something colder, more determined. She deserved self-care, but I didn't deserve basic respect from my own family. That night I did something I hadn't done in years. I ordered takeout from the nice Italian restaurant downtown, the one I'd always avoided because it seemed too expensive. I ate fettuccine Alfredo and drank a glass of wine while sitting at my kitchen table, reading through all the inheritance documents again. My phone rang around 9. Michael's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Dad. We just got back from our trip." "Listen, about the weekend, how was your vacation?" I interrupted. "It was, He paused, probably realizing he'd been caught. "It was good. But Dad, I want to explain about Father's Day." Lisa was stressed about work, and we thought maybe a change of scenery would help her decompress. It wasn't personal. "Of course not," I said quietly. "It never is." "What do you mean?" I looked down at the bank statement in front of me, at numbers that represented a kind of freedom I'd never experienced. "Nothing, son. I'm just tired. We should get together soon. Maybe next weekend we could take you out to dinner." I almost laughed. Take me out to dinner? With what? The money I'd given them for their house? The money I'd paid for Lisa's education? The money they'd spent on their spontaneous tropical getaway? "We'll see," I said. "I might be busy." Michael sounded surprised. "Busy? With what?" For the first time in our relationship, I hung up on my son without answering his question. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by documents that proved I wasn't the poor old man Lisa had called me. But more importantly, surrounded by proof that I didn't have to be the man they'd trained me to be. Uncle Harold was right. It was time to make some choices. The transformation didn't happen overnight. I spent the first week after meeting with Marcus just walking through my house, seeing it through different eyes. Every worn piece of furniture, every postponed repair, every corner where I'd settled for good enough suddenly looked like evidence of how small I'd allowed my world to become. I started with small changes. I called a contractor to fix the leak that had been staining my bathroom ceiling for 2 years. The man who came out looked at me like I was crazy when I told him money wasn't a concern. "Most folks want the cheapest option," he said, reviewing his estimate. "I want it done right," I told him, "whatever that costs." Next was the carpet. The beige shag that had been practical when I moved into this house 6 years ago was now threadbare and depressing. I spent an entire Saturday at flooring stores, something I'd never imagined enjoying. For the first time in decades, I didn't automatically gravitate toward the clearance section. The salesman at the third store I visited showed me hardwood that cost more per square foot than I used to spend on groceries in a week. It was beautiful, rich oak with a warm golden finish that would make my small rooms feel larger and brighter. "It's a significant investment," he warned me, probably noticing my old clothes and assuming I was in over my head. "I understand," I said, pulling out my new debit card. "When can you install it?" While the house was being updated, I started working on myself. I'd avoided the dentist for 3 years because the cleaning wasn't covered by my insurance. Now I made appointments for everything I'd been putting off. Dental work, eye exam, a physical with my doctor who'd been nagging me to get some tests done. "Mr. Chen," my doctor said during my appointment, "your blood pressure is much better than last time. Have you been less stressed lately?" I thought about that question as I drove home. Less stressed? In a way, yes. The constant worry about money, about being a burden, about whether I could afford this or that, all of that had lifted. But there was something else, too, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I was planning something, and the secrecy of it gave me energy. The hardest part was staying quiet around Michael and Lisa. They called a few times that first week, trying to make amends for the Father's Day disaster. Michael suggested we meet for coffee at the diner where we used to go when he was in high school. "You seem different, Dad," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "More, I don't know, energetic?" I shrugged. Maybe I'm just sleeping better. Lisa had come with him, which surprised me. She was dressed down for once in jeans and a simple sweater instead of the designer outfits she usually wore around me. I wondered if this was her version of trying to look relatable. "Robert, I owe you an apology," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "That text was inappropriate. I was stressed about work and I took it out on you. It wasn't fair." I watched her perform her contrition, noting how she blamed stress rather than taking real responsibility, but I just nodded. Apology accepted. Michael looked relieved. "Great. So maybe we can plan something for next weekend. Make up for missing Father's Day?" "Actually, I might be traveling next weekend," I said. They both stared at me. "Traveling?" Lisa asked. "Where?" "I'm thinking of visiting some places I've never seen. Montana, maybe." It wasn't entirely a lie. I had been considering a trip to see Uncle Harold's ranch. "Montana?" Michael frowned. "Dad, that's pretty far and expensive. Are you sure you can afford—" "I'm sure," I interrupted. Lisa's eyes narrowed slightly. I could see her calculating, wondering where I was getting money for travel, but she couldn't ask directly without revealing how closely she monitored my finances. Over the following weeks, I continued making changes. I bought new clothes, not expensive designer items, but well-made pieces that fit properly and made me feel confident. I traded in my 10-year-old sedan for a newer model with heated seats and a navigation system. I started eating at restaurants I'd only driven past before, discovering I actually enjoyed dining alone when it was by choice rather than necessity. The most satisfying change was the gradual shift in how people treated me. The staff at the bank, who used to barely acknowledge me when I came in to deposit my modest pension check, now greeted me warmly and asked about my day. Shop owners who'd previously seemed impatient with my budget-conscious questions were suddenly eager to show me their best merchandise. I realized that my appearance of poverty hadn't just been about money. It had been about carrying myself like someone who didn't matter, someone who should be grateful for scraps of attention. When I stopped doing that, the world responded differently. But the real test came 6 weeks after my meeting with Marcus, when I ran into one of Lisa's friends at the grocery store. "Robert," Janet squealed, air-kissing me like we were old friends instead of acquaintances who'd barely spoken in years. "You look fantastic. Have you been working out?" I smiled. "Just taking better care of myself." "Well, it shows. Lisa mentioned you've been traveling lately. Where did you go?" I'd made that Montana trip the week before, flying first class for the first time in my life and staying at a luxury lodge near Uncle Harold's ranch. The property was even more beautiful than the photos had suggested, and I'd spent 3 days hiking the trails and thinking about what I wanted to do with my new life. "Just some places I'd always wanted to see," I told Janet. "That's wonderful. You know, Lisa was saying just yesterday how impressed she is that you're living your best life. She said it really inspired her to think about her own relationship with money and happiness." I bet she did, I thought. Lisa had been fishing for information about my sudden lifestyle changes for weeks now. She'd started calling more often, dropping by unannounced, commenting on everything new she noticed in my house. "Dad, this furniture is really nice," she'd said during her last visit, running her hands along the new leather sofa I'd bought. It must have cost a fortune. I saved up, I'd answered, which was technically true. But your pension can't cover all these upgrades, she'd pressed. Are you using credit cards? Because Michael and I could help you budget. I'm fine, Lisa, but thank you for your concern. The frustration in her eyes had been delicious. She was used to knowing exactly where I stood financially, used to being able to calculate my limitations. My sudden independence was driving her crazy. I finished my conversation with Janet and headed home, my cart full of ingredients for a nice dinner. I'd decided to host a small dinner party the following weekend, something I hadn't done since Sarah died. I'd invited 3 old friends I'd lost touch with over the years, men I'd drifted away from, partly because I'd been embarrassed by my modest circumstances. When I called Tom, my old fishing buddy, to invite him, he'd sounded genuinely happy to hear from me. "Bob, I was just thinking about you the other day. How have you been?" "Better than ever," I told him. "I'd like to catch up. Are you free Saturday night for dinner?" As I put away groceries in my newly renovated kitchen, I thought about Uncle Harold's letter. He'd been right about people showing their true colors when money was involved. But he'd also been right about something else. Money wasn't just about security. It was about dignity, about having choices. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt like I had both. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Hey, Robert. Michael and I were thinking of taking you out for a nice dinner this weekend. Somewhere special. Let me know what works for your schedule." I smiled as I typed back, "Thanks for thinking of me, but I already have plans. Maybe another time." Another time, when I was ready to reveal exactly who I'd become, when I was ready to show them the envelope that would change everything. But not yet. Uncle Harold had been right about timing, too. The dinner party was a success beyond my expectations. Tom, Bill, and Danny, 3 friends I'd been too proud to see during my lean years, arrived at my house and barely recognized the place. The hardwood floors gleamed under new lighting, the renovated kitchen sparkled with stainless steel appliances, and the dining room table I'd inherited from Sarah's mother was set with china we'd only used for special occasions. "Bob, this place looks incredible," Tom said, accepting a glass of the good whiskey I'd splurged on. "When did you do all this?" "Recently," I said, enjoying the mystery. "I decided it was time to stop living like a monk." We spent the evening catching up, sharing stories about our grown children, our health scares, our late wives. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one with problems that needed solving or finances that needed managing. I was just a man among men, equal in every way. "You know, Bob," Danny said as we cleared the dinner plates, "you seem like a different person than the last time I saw you. Happier, more confident." I thought about that as they left, exchanging promises to get together more often. I was different. The question was whether my family would recognize the change, and more importantly, whether they'd accept it. I got my answer the next Monday when Lisa showed up at my door unannounced, her usual practice when she wanted to catch me off guard. This time, though, I was ready for her. "Robert, I hope you don't mind me dropping by," she said, already pushing past me into my living room. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on you." She'd never been in my neighborhood without a specific reason before, but I didn't point that out. "Would you like some coffee?" I offered. "That would be nice," she said, but she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were scanning my renovated living room, cataloging every change. I could almost see her calculating the cost of everything she saw. In the kitchen, I could hear her moving around, probably opening drawers and cabinets. When I returned with 2 cups of the expensive coffee I'd started buying, she was standing by my bookshelf, holding a framed photo of Sarah and me from our honeymoon in Hawaii. "This is such a beautiful picture," she said. "I've never seen it before." "It was in storage," I lied. The truth was, I'd finally felt worthy of displaying the memories of my happy marriage again. Lisa set the photo down and accepted her coffee, settling onto my new leather sofa. "Robert, I have to ask, and please don't take this the wrong way, but where is all this money coming from?" There it was, the question she'd been building up to for weeks. I sat across from her in my matching leather chair, taking my time before answering. "What money?" "Come on." Her smile was strained. "The renovations, the new car, the furniture. Michael said you mentioned traveling. That's not exactly pension budget territory." I sipped my coffee, watching her try to maintain her concerned daughter-in-law facade. I've been more careful with my spending lately, making better choices. Her laugh was sharp. Better choices? Robert, this coffee probably costs more than your old grocery budget for a week. She wasn't wrong. But her tone revealed everything I needed to know about how she really saw me. Maybe I underestimated how much I could afford, I said mildly. Lisa leaned forward, her mask slipping further. Look, I'm just worried about you. Older people can be vulnerable to scams, financial exploitation. If someone convinced you to take out loans or credit cards you can't afford, that's very thoughtful of you to worry, I interrupted. But I'm fine. Are you, though? She set her coffee down harder than necessary. Because this whole transformation seems pretty sudden and secretive. Why won't you just tell us what's going on? I studied her face, seeing the frustration and fear beneath her concern. She was afraid of losing control, of not knowing where she stood in the hierarchy she'd constructed in her mind. Lisa, I said quietly, when have I ever been secretive with you about anything? That stopped her. Because the truth was, I'd always been an open book, too open. I'd shared my financial struggles, my loneliness, my health concerns. I'd made myself vulnerable to people who used that vulnerability against me. I just think families should be honest with each other, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. I agree, I said. Complete honesty is important in families. She nodded, thinking she'd won some kind of point. So let me be completely honest with you, Lisa. I set my coffee cup down and looked directly into her eyes. I know about the money. Her face went blank. What money? The money I gave you and Michael for your house down payment. The money I paid for your MBA. The money that was supposed to be paid back but never was. Color drained from her cheeks. Robert, we've been meaning to talk to you about that. Our financial situation has been complicated, and I also know about your credit cards, the debt you've been hiding from Michael, the lifestyle you've been funding with money you don't have. Lisa stood up abruptly. I don't know where you're getting your information, but from Michael's credit report, I said calmly. He asked me to co-sign a loan for him last month, remember? I had to pull his credit to qualify. Imagine my surprise when I saw the balances on cards he didn't even know existed. He was pale now, gripping the back of the sofa. You have no right to. I have every right to protect my son from financial fraud, I said, standing as well. Just like I had every right to finally understand why a woman who owes me $65,000 feels comfortable calling me a poor old man. Lisa's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice still calm but carrying new authority. You're going to go home and tell Michael the truth about your debt, all of it. You're going to start making payments on the money you owe me, real payments, not promises, and you're going to stop treating me like I'm some charity case you have to tolerate. You can't, he started. Can't what? Can't demand respect in my own family? Can't expect honesty from people I've supported for years? I walked to my front door and opened it. Actually, Lisa, I can do whatever I want. You just forgot that because I've been letting you walk all over me. She grabbed her purse and moved toward the door, but stopped just before leaving. Michael won't believe you, she said, trying to sound confident. He trusts me. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Credit report, I said, holding it up. Bank statements. Text messages from your friend Janet talking about your shopping sprees while you were supposed to be broke. Should I go on? Lisa stared at the paper like it was a snake. I'm not trying to ruin your marriage, I said more gently. I'm trying to save it. Debt destroys relationships, Lisa. Lies destroy families. If you come clean now, if you make an effort to change, Michael will forgive you. He loves you. Tears were starting to form in her eyes. Real ones. Not the crocodile tears she usually deployed when she wanted something. But if you don't, I continued, if you keep lying and stealing and treating the people who love you like marks in some con game, then you'll lose everything, and you'll deserve to. She left without another word, her designer heels clicking rapidly down my front walkway. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. After years of avoiding confrontation, of letting things slide to keep the peace, I'd finally stood up for myself. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Michael. Dad, Lisa just came home crying. She said you accused her of stealing from us. What the hell is going on? I took a deep breath. Son, I think you and I need to have a long conversation. A completely honest one. About what? I walked to my kitchen table, where I'd laid out all the documents I'd gathered over the past few weeks. Bank statements, credit reports, loan agreements, records of every dollar I'd given them over the years. About your wife's debts, about the money I'm owed, and about some changes that are going to happen in this family whether you like them or not. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Dad, Michael said finally, his voice small and uncertain. I think I need to come over. Yes, I said. You do. Michael arrived an hour later, looking older than I'd seen him in years. His hair was messed up like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He sat heavily at my kitchen table, staring at the documents I'd spread out like evidence in a trial. Is all of this true? He asked quietly, picking up one of Lisa's credit card statements. Every word? He studied the numbers, his face growing paler with each page. $28,000 on this card alone, he whispered. I thought we had maybe $5,000 in credit card debt total. There are 6 cards, Michael. All in your name, all with your credit backing them up. But she's been making the payments from a separate account, so you wouldn't see the statements. My son looked up at me with eyes full of pain. How long have you known? I suspected something was wrong after your Father's Day message. I started paying attention, asking questions. The full picture came together over the past few weeks. Michael set down the papers and put his head in his hands. God, Dad, I'm so sorry. The things she said about you, the way we treated you. Tell me something, son, I said, sitting across from him. In your heart, did you really want to skip Father's Day? Or did Lisa convince you it was a good idea? He was quiet for a long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. She said you'd understand, that you were low maintenance and wouldn't make a big deal of it. She said we needed the time together more than you needed us there. I nodded. I'd suspected as much. But I knew it was wrong, Dad. The whole time we were there, I kept thinking about you sitting alone on Father's Day. I kept wanting to call, but Lisa said I was being ridiculous. Why didn't you trust your instincts? Michael wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Because she made me feel guilty for even thinking about it. She's good at that, making you feel like your feelings are wrong, like you're being selfish for wanting what you want. I recognized that pattern. Lisa had been using the same technique on me for years. There's something else I need to tell you, I said. I walked to my bedroom and returned with Uncle Harold's letter and the inheritance documents. Michael's eyes widened as I explained about the ranch, the investments, the oil rights. By the time I finished, he was staring at me like I was a stranger. You're rich, he said, his voice flat with shock. I'm comfortable, I corrected. More comfortable than I ever expected to be. And you didn't tell us? I handed him Uncle Harold's letter. Read this. Michael read silently, his expression changing as he absorbed his great-uncle's words about dignity and choices and not letting people walk all over him. He was right, Michael said finally. Lisa would have had us moving in with you within a week if she'd known about this money. What about you, son? How do you feel about it? Michael was quiet for a moment. Honestly, relieved. Not because of the money, but because now I understand why you've seemed different lately. Stronger. I thought you were getting sick or something, but you were just growing up, I guess. Growing a spine. I almost smiled at that. Better late than never. So what happens now? He asked. Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. The kind who lets his wife steal from his father and lie to his face, or the kind who stands up for what's right. Michael looked down at the credit card statements again. She's going to fight me on this. Probably. She might leave me. She might. He took a shaky breath. What if I can't handle being alone? I leaned forward and put my hand on his shoulder. Son, I've been alone for 20 years since your mother died. It's not the worst thing that can happen to you. Being alone is better than being with someone who doesn't respect you. We talked until almost midnight. Michael called Lisa around 10 to tell her he wouldn't be coming home, that he needed time to think. I could hear her voice through the phone, high and panicked, making demands and threats. Michael just hung up. I'll stay on your couch tonight, if that's okay, he said. You can stay as long as you need to. The next morning I made breakfast while Michael called his bank to freeze the credit cards Lisa had been using. He arranged to meet with a financial counselor about consolidating their debt and setting up a payment plan. He also called his boss to arrange some time off work to sort out his personal life. "What about Lisa?" I asked, as we sat eating pancakes like we used to when he was a teenager. "I'm going to give her a choice," he said. "Marriage counseling, financial counseling, complete honesty going forward, or divorce. No middle ground." 3 days later, Michael went home. I didn't hear from either of them for a week, which I took as a good sign. When people are doing the hard work of saving a relationship, they don't have time for phone calls. When Michael finally called, his voice sounded different, clearer. "She chose counseling," he said. "It's going to be a long road, but she admitted everything. She's got a real shopping addiction, Dad. She's been using spending to cope with anxiety since college. She needs professional help." "Are you okay with that?" "I think so. She's agreed to turn over all her cards to let me handle our finances until she proves she can be trusted again, and she wants to apologize to you in person." I wasn't sure I was ready for that conversation yet, but I was willing to see what she had to say. Lisa came to my house the following Sunday, looking smaller somehow. She wasn't wearing makeup, and her clothes were simple, casual. She sat on my couch, the same couch where she'd demanded answers about my money just 2 weeks before. "Robert, I owe you more than an apology," she began. "I owe you amends. I've been treating you terribly for years, and it had nothing to do with you and everything to do with my own problems." I listened as she explained about her anxiety, her compulsive spending, her need to feel superior to others as a way of managing her own insecurities. "That text message about you being a poor old man," she said, tears streaming down her face, "that was me projecting my worst fears about myself onto you. I was afraid Michael would see me as a burden, so I made you into one instead." "Why?" I asked. "What did I ever do to threaten you?" "You didn't do anything, that was the problem. You were kind, generous, selfless, everything I knew I wasn't. Every time you helped us, every time you put our needs before your own, it reminded me of what a selfish person I was, so I convinced myself you were the problem." It was a more honest explanation than I'd expected, maybe even honest enough to build on. "What do you want from me now?" I asked. "I want to pay you back, every penny. I want to earn your forgiveness, and I want to learn how to be the daughter-in-law you deserved from the beginning." I thought about Uncle Harold's letter, about choices and dignity and second chances. "It's going to take time, Lisa, years probably, and if you ever treat me that way again, you'll cut us off completely," she finished. "I understand. I won't blame you if you do." 6 months later, I was standing on the deck of Uncle Harold's ranch house in Montana, watching the sunset over mountains I was slowly learning to call home. I'd decided to spend my summers there, keeping the little house in town for winters when the Montana weather got too harsh. Michael and Lisa had driven up to visit me for a long weekend. It was the first time we'd all been together since the confrontation, and I'd been nervous about how it would go. But watching them now, sitting by the fire pit I'd had installed, I could see the changes in both of them. Michael was more confident, more decisive. Lisa was quieter, more thoughtful, quicker to listen than to speak. They were working on their marriage, and it showed. "Dad," Michael said as we watched the last light fade from the sky, "I want you to know something. This is the best Father's Day gift you could have given me." "What do you mean?" "Teaching me to stand up for myself, showing me what self-respect looks like. I never learned that before." Lisa nodded, stirring the fire with a long stick. "He's right. You saved our marriage by refusing to enable my behavior anymore." I thought about the man I'd been a year ago, sitting alone in his kitchen on Father's Day, reading a cruel text message, and feeling worthless. That man felt like a stranger now. "I didn't save anything," I said. "I just finally learned that I was worth saving myself." The fire crackled between us, sending sparks up into the star-filled Montana sky. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt completely at peace. Not because my family had changed, though they had, but because I had finally learned the difference between being loved and being needed. And I had learned, at 57 years old, that it's never too late to choose yourself. My phone buzzed with a text message. For just a moment, my stomach tightened with old familiar anxiety. But when I looked at the screen, it was just a message from Tom, asking if I wanted to go fishing the next time I was back in town. I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely, I'll bring the good gear." Because these days, I could afford the good gear. More importantly, I finally understood that I deserved it.